Securing the first round, or really any round of funding, is challenging.
Yeah, it is. It is, well, right? But
no, is it? No.
But it is. It really is. I agree. But lucky for you, we here have Pedro Santos Vieira, who has been on both sides of the table. So he has invested himself in early-stage startups, and at the same time, he has mentored a lot of startups through the wild ride of fundraising. So he will be able to tell you how investors think, and at the same time, how you can improve your fundraising process. So let's welcome on stage Pedro! Woo!
My mic working. How's everyone doing? Tired of a whole morning of content. And I'm going to talk about something that you probably are very tired to hear about, which is how to fundraise. But I will try to do it with a slightly different angle, and I'm trying to offer a few non-obvious things about the fundraising process. Little tricks, little hacks that you can use to increase the chances of raising your first round faster. But as they say in every keynote school, you have to have a credibility slide. So that's my credibility slide. I was a founder in Silicon Valley after grad school. I stayed, started a tech company in digital health with faculty from Berkeley, where I studied. Did the Silicon Valley story from starting the company, raising several rounds, and exiting the company. And after that, became an investor. First as an angel, and later as an institutional VC with funds first in Southern Europe, now in Eurasia. And in that process, I've invested in more than 100 companies. I've accelerated a few hundred more all around the world. So I have a pretty global perspective on how to raise capital. And I'm going to try to use that to my favor tonight. I also run Ironman races without practicing, but that's a keynote for another day. So about the first round and the process itself. Before I jump into the process, we can optimize the process, but we need to have the right foundations to do it. And so I'm going to cover 4 very boring things that you've heard over and over and over. But like I said, I'm going to try and catch you on a few non-obvious things. So first of all, market opportunity. How many of you have talked with 10 of your users? And I'm going to step forward because I cannot see the audience. How many of you have talked with 10 of your users? Very few. I mean, how many of you are founders, by the way? Maybe let's start back. Okay. So of you, how many has talked to 10 users? 50 users. 100 users, right? So the harsh reality is more than 80, 70, 90%, depends on the study, of companies fail because there is directly or indirectly no need for what's being built. And this is because we as founders tend to fall in love with what we're building, and we think the whole world is going to want it. I mean, the pain I feel is so hard, so deep. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there with the same pain, and I'm going to become, billionaire by building this unicorn. That is wrong. And so the first point here is it is very important for you to do proper customer discovery. And what that means is that you not only have to talk to many of the clients, as I was asking, you have to talk to them in a non-biased way. And by that means that you have to write a script. That's the first trick of the night. You have to write an interview script of non-leading questions. You don't ask people, do you feel this problem? You ask them about the situation, and then you determine if there's a problem or not. Because if you ask leading questions, they will also tend to say, yes, there's a problem. Yes, I want to pay for the solution. But then when you ask them for the credit card, they won't give it to you. Second thing is, how many of you are tackling a billion-dollar opportunity? A few? Are you shy of saying it? Okay. And how many of you got to that number by saying that the whole market is 10 billion and I'm just going to take 10% market share of it? I can tell you over and over and over, this is what founders do in their investment decks, and that's wrong. What you really need to do is you need to find the very specific target, what we call the ideal customer profile. You have to find that persona. You need to understand what's their willingness to pay for your product or service, And those two together will get you to your bottom-up approach or bottom-up assessment of your market opportunity. Do that, and you will come across as more credible to the investors than you just say a percentage of market share. Even if that assessment is inaccurate, because the assumptions are not always accurate, right? So the other thing is everyone or a lot of people fail at presenting the product to the investors and to the markets. And you know why? Because everyone is deeply focused on presenting the product, but what matters is the benefits that the product or the service brings to the users. So when you're pitching what you do to someone, an investor or a client, what you need to explain is how much better their lives or the world will be if your product and your service comes to be a reality. And you need also to present it to them, to the audience, whether investors or to the market, in a credible way. When you're doing your uniqueness comparison, use things that are credible. Don't say, our product has better usability. Our product is cheaper, which is something that's only going to get you down the rabbit hole of a race to the bottom. People will think your product is cheap, right? So choose competitive analysis variables that are quantifiable, they're hard facts, things like we increase user retention by X with this feature, or we increase sales conversion by X with that feature. So pick things that are relevant for your feature set and compare those against your competitors. And don't present to the investors in your fundraising deck a matrix where everyone has red check boxes saying no one does this and we do all of them. That's not credible. And investors have seen this so many times that they will call bullshit on you, they will rule you out. Team. No one builds a massive company alone. Even the most iconic solo founders surround themselves with a senior team very early on. And when you do that, it is very important that you all have what we call founder market fit or team market fit. Everyone is talking to you about product market fit every time, all the time. But for very early stage investments and for your first round, you will have very few metrics to show. And so what matters, what you're going to be assessed on is on your capacity to be the founding team that's going to tackle this problem at this time. You have to prove you're the right team at the right time for the right problem. And how do you do that? Well, the obvious thing that everyone does on their fundraising decks is, okay, we have a complementary team. She's the business person, she's the tech person, I do this, I do that. And then they also say, and so we're complementary, and we've been working together for 5 years, 10 years, we built this, we built that. That's obvious. Everyone does that. But, like I said, at the very beginning, you're being assessed by the investors on your own capacity to become an entrepreneur. And that means that you're being assessed on, is this person a fast learner? Is this person coachable? Is this person brave enough to recognize the things that she or he doesn't know and goes learn those fast? So give evidence on these characteristics to the investors when you're talking to them. When you're being interviewed, or you're doing a pitch fundraising call or meeting, be a good listener. Let the VCs talk and you talk less. That shouldn't be hard. VCs like to talk a lot, right? So let them talk. As they're talking, you're learning from them. Learn, listen. And then, at the very end, also be brave enough to recognize the things you don't know. When you talk to investors, especially the ones that built companies before like I did, we know very well how to call BS on the other founders. So if you don't know an answer to something, it is okay to say, I actually don't know. But here's what I'm going to do to find out, and I will get back to you quickly with an answer. Do that, and again, you will come across as a strong founder that is credible. Final traction. This is actually, I mean, this is the secret sauce. If you have traction with good unit economics, not expensive traction, your work to fundraise is more than half done. So you need to have traction to raise more easily. Sometimes you won't have it, and I'll get to that point. But to know or to prove that you have traction, you have to obsess about measuring things. And as early stage founders, we usually put that aside. We just want to build, 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 and we think it doesn't really matter what's happening. But I tell you, that's wrong. You have to wisely, but effectively track things. You have to obsess about tracking things. And because you cannot manage what you don't measure, right? So traction needs to be measured, and then it has to be timed. Also obvious to say, well, I want my growth curve to be going up when I'm fundraising. Yes, but you know how many companies actually are able to do that? Very few. And so what you need to do in advance of the fundraising process is you need to understand what are the little things that you can do to trigger some growth. It doesn't have to be explosive, but some. And it doesn't have to be also paid user acquisition. Little things, little email campaigns, little viral things here and there. Find out what those are, and then you use those as your weapons just before your fundraising window opens, because then your metrics are indeed going up and to the right, and then you compress the fundraising process in a small window of time, and you raise money. And I will come back to this topic later. So, now, hacks about the process itself, because if you have these 4 things nailed down, then the process becomes easier. This is, thank you to Stefan von Perge, one of our expert members who mapped in very detail the fundraising steps. I'm not going to use it for at this level of detail, but I'm going to use it to now share my own views on each of these steps. First, you need to decide if you want to fundraise. No one asks you this question. I came here on stage already assuming that everyone wants to fundraise. The reality is not everyone, not every company, not every team is ready or will ever be ready for fundraise. Dealing with VCs is a pain in the ass, okay? So first you need to decide, am I ready to lose some control of my company? Am I ready to have someone looking over my shoulder and with reporting duties? Am I ready to lose a big part of the upside of the company because I have to share it with them, right? If the answer is yes, then you need to answer the next 2 questions, which is how much do I need to raise and when do I need to raise it? And these 2 questions are scientifically and crucial to do proper fundraising the first time around. And the way we teach this to our companies in our acceleration programs is you reverse engineering your rounds. So if you want to raise, say, a seed round, and at that point you say you want to raise a 10 million valuation, and let's say you assume in your space, because it's AI and it's very hot, you get a 10x multiplier, you need to be doing, say, 1 million AIR. Okay, so if I need to be doing 1 million AIR in my seed round, when I'm raising my seed round, how much capital do I need to go from basically no revenue where I'm at now until then? How much time do I need? How much capital do I need? That's how you determine how much you need to raise in your first round. Then you need to worry about the metrics that I've been talking so much. When you don't have hard metrics, when you're still not making money, when your revenue is sparse because it's pilots here, pilots there, and it's still not recurring, you also need to find a few other 1, 2, 3 things that are really interesting about what you're building, about your team, about the space, things that are striking, surprising, that spike curiosity, right? How many of you, if you stop me when I leave the stage, are going to be able to tell me at least one thing, like one thing about your company that is going to make my jaw drop and I say, okay, I don't have time because I have to run to the airport, but here's my email, or reach me out this way and let's talk, right? How many of you have this? It's crucial. It's crucial. And when you start putting all of these together in the form of a deck, it's important to know that there's multiple decks. There should be multiple decks. Many companies always have like one deck, and they add slides here, and they add slides there, and they add annexes and appendixes and whatnot. That may work for some, but that's not the right way to do it. Also, another big problem is that everyone thinks, or a lot of people think, that a deck is a story about your company. Listen to this. Many people think that a deck is a story about your company, and it's not. A fundraising deck is a story about that fundraising round. Company will be a part of that story, but each fundraising deck has to tell its own story. A pre-seed deck is one thing. A seed deck is another thing. A bridge deck is another thing. So you have to think, what's the story that you want to tell with that set of slides? And you want the investors to go through them alone or with you and get the storyline and understand the call to action. Okay, these guys are trying to get this. and they're trying to get it for these reasons. That will help you convert that investor. And then finally, before you start sending these out, you need to have a CRM, right? So how many people have a CRM of investors? Oh my God, okay, a few. I hope that the ones who have a CRM of investors, it could be a spreadsheet, has at least qualified them, right? You said, okay, these guys invest this amount. These guys invest in these verticals. These guys invest in this region, right? That's the qualification. That's like the sales process-like thing that I was saying, that fundraising is like a sales process. You need to generate the leads, you qualify the leads, and then you engage the leads. But how many of you in your CRM, that's another trick, another important hack, how many of you in your investor CRM have a blurb of 100, 200 characters, like an X-like blurb that says the specific reason or reasons why you want to meet that individual? Very few, I can say. So when you're asking for introductions, which is another topic I'll cover later, when you're asking for introductions, you need to understand specifically why you want to meet that investor. That's the hyper qualification that you need to do to increase your conversion, right? Strongly qualified leads have a higher chance of conversion if you understand sales. So again, this is what happens in the fundraising process. So it's not like about, I saw Mark's picture in the previous presentation. It's not about saying, hey, can you introduce me to A16Z? That's not enough. What you need to do is, I want to talk to Mark because he wrote this thing in this post, in this platform, and it is aligned with what we're building in this way or that way or that way. Or I want to talk to individual XYZ because they've invested in a company that we feed into. So there's complementarity in what we do and what he invested in, so he may want to invest in us too. Very specific reasons why you want to meet someone, super important. And then once this is all together, you need to start interacting with the investors. And here's another very important lesson. Everyone who's a founder, myself included, gets trained to be in the hot seat of being the person who gets asked questions and has to answer questions, right? But what we do very poorly is to actually ask questions ourselves. And it is very important as early stage founders to talk to the investors and ask a lot of questions to understand how they think, so that the next time you're pitching to them, because you're going to interact with them over time, the next time you're pitching to them, you know what to say. Have the investors set the bar for you. Ask them, what do you need to see from us in 6 months for us to be an investable target by you? They set the bar, and then you go you do your homework, and 6 months later you come to them and you say, you know what, you told us to do this, it's all done. So you remove the objections, again, a sales process trick, right? You remove the objections, and then the investor has to come up with some other excuses, or invest, right? And if they say no at the very end of this process, then ask why. They may not give you an answer, but it doesn't hurt asking, right? Learn from the no's, learn from the rejections, improve. Then identify sources. It's easy to say, okay, I'm going to LinkedIn, I'm going to find out who knows who, I'm going to ask for an introduction. That's cool. Again, that's the obvious part of networking for fundraising. But here's another interesting hack. How many of you know about Google Alerts or something similar? Okay, pretty old school tool, trick, whatever, right? How many of you actually use something like that to know where your investors are going to be? How many of you use that to know what your investors are writing about or thinking about? That's important, because if you, again, have this holistic picture of what they say and what they do, and then you know what they are, you can design serendipity. You can run into them here, run into them there over time, right? And then with these dots, with this line, you increase the confidence they may have on you. And then when you ask for introductions to someone, or when you write cold outreach emails or LinkedIn texts, you have to do it wisely. You can't just call someone and say, hey, can you introduce me to XYZ? Or text someone who's like, can you introduce me to this partner at this company? No. You need to have, again, the blurb that I was talking about of why you want to meet that person. You have to have a blurb about your own company. And you have 2 or 3 striking facts that if someone reads it, they're going to want to talk to you. Think about this. Structure it in what we call here a forward intro email. And then once this is all put together, what we do is we try to compress the meetings in a window of time. This meme of always be closing is bullshit. What you do is you build relationships over time. You run into the investors here and there. You give them updates. You send them updates over email. And they will see a line being formed by those dots. And then when you're ready to fundraise, when your metrics are right, when the time is right, then you open a fundraising window. And you, for your own discipline, set the time. You say, I'm going to raise within this period of time. And then you go out and you talk. Because by compressing all the meetings and all the calls in one short window of time, you also increase the chances of them talking to each other, because investors talk to each other. And so if a company is hot in the space, and for 2-3 weeks everyone's talking about this company, if you do it right, it's positive buzz for you, and it drives FOMO. And one last hack to drive FOMO. Use Calendly or some other tools to schedule the meetings with investors, but don't keep it all open. So many founders say, hey, go to my Calendly and book a call. And then you go there, and it's like if they're available all day long. And then you ask, you wonder, what's this founder doing, right? Are they not building the company? Are they not having any investment meetings? So only open a few slots to create this scarcity effect, because then the investors are going to think, oh man, this person is either really busy fundraising or really busy building the company. Might be interesting to talk to them. And then final hack, because I run out of time, always qualify your VCs in the ones you really want and the ones you don't want or you're okay to lose, and then practice on those. Practice with the ones that are not super important for you. Learn from the mistakes you do with them, and then iterate and pitch to the ones you really want. That's it from me. If you want to connect, here's 2 QR codes to help you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pedro. Thank you for the insights, and I hope that really you are one step closer to closing the first round. And for me, actually, one of the things that I took note of is that the pitch deck, it's not about the company's story, but actually the story of the fundraising round. And that was actually something that I've never looked at it that way, because I was always building my pitch decks as the story of the company, not the story of the fundraising round.
Right, same here. And actually, I think one thing that Pedro didn't mention, that fundraising sometimes is a full-time job. So get ready to spend a lot of time. He really mentioned some practical things you have to do, but get ready, it takes time.
Yeah, it is true.